Ladies and gents, how are you doing? Today's story has to come from the National Secular Society because the BBC wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, would they? The NSS reports charges have been brought against a man who burnt the big book of desert fables, and the CPS has admitted it's incorrectly worded. This comes as the CPS replaces the charge of harassing the institution founded by the pot-bellied epileptic desert dwarf against Hamid Koskan following an NSS intervention. So if you didn't hear, obviously the gentleman that set fire to everybody's favourite fairy story has been charged, and he's probably looking at a jail term because obviously the adherents of said religion know that they have their iron-shod boots on the throat of the nation, and they are of course enforcing one of those tasty blasphemy laws they all like so much in parts of the world where reading, writing and arithmetic are as alien to the population as best bitter and bacon butties. The story's a good one. Twitter's full of lefty lunatics who are now trying to jam square pegs through round holes because they basically demanded these laws and now all of a sudden they think it's a bad idea. And of course the government are between a rock and a hard place because, as usual, the contemptible scum that lords it over us, the self-serving slime that they are, have no moral compass and no real position on anything, which is why they always try to take both positions on every argument, all the time. That's how you know you're being led by snakes. Even if positions are mutually exclusive, the British politician will try to be on both sides of every argument. So I'll read you the story, I'll cover a few comical tweets, and obviously I'll point out why the self-serving globalist sociopaths have tied themselves in knots, desperately trying to placate the only people on earth thick enough to think that hardline militant religious extremists are somehow going to sit under the equity umbrella with militant feminists, trans activists and Boy George. It makes loads of sense, doesn't it? Right then, fascinating story, as usual. Visible to the normal working classes, the general public from 50 miles away, because, as usual, the British politician, the self-serving slime, thinks he never really has to take a position on anything. He can just talk out of both sides of his mouth all the time, and when he or she, Jess Phillip, when sheep teeth's sitting in a big golden bell-end church begging angry third world men for their votes, she'll pretend, oh yeah, I absolutely love the scribblings of the epileptic desert midget, and then when she's sat in front of a load of lefty students in the student union, Guardian readers and BBC journalists a few days later, she'll go, oh yeah, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. What about if your freedom of expression involves setting fire to a few bits of paper that many people see as virulently homophobic, and you consistently advocate for both sides of that argument? What about then? Well, we know what happens then, don't we?
Does not compute. Does not compute.
The wording of a charge against a man who burned a daft book in protest was incorrectly applied, the CPS has admitted. Hamid Koskan was charged with intent to cause harassment, alarm or distress against the religious institution of the obvious after burning a big daft book outside the Turkish consulate in February. Following interventions by the NSS, the CPS has said the wording of the charge was incorrectly applied and it has submitted a new one. But the NSS said any conviction based on the facts of this case would suggest the reinstatement of an offence of blasphemy in English law by the back door. And obviously blasphemy was abolished as a common law offence in England and Wales in the noughties. And Robert Jenrick has also criticised the charge in a video posted on X. He said burning it is something that some people find very offensive and few people would condone, but that's not the point. It's a rare time that I agree with a conservative politician these days, but this is one of them. The CPS has now told the Telegraph it charged Koskan on the basis that his actions caused harassment, alarm or distress, which is a criminal offence, and that it was motivated by hostility towards a religious group. Okay, so it's all total bollocks then, isn't it? Causing distress is a criminal offence in the UK. How are you supposed to determine whether or not you've caused distress? If causing distress should result in a criminal conviction, Every single politician in the Houses of Lords and Parliament should be doing a 25-year stretch. Every time that little peanut-headed pygmy, sad sack, definitely can't, opens his mouth, 60 million people get alarmed by it because it's like having a Taliban fighter running the most populous city in England. But I don't see him pulling an 18-hour unpaid shift in the salt mines, do you? Last year, the government said it would not reintroduce blasphemy laws after Tahir Ali, oh my God, we all know who he is. Tahir Ali makes Osama bin Laden look like a peace-loving hippie beatnik. And he asked Prime Minister Starmer to commit to reintroducing measures to prohibit the desecration of all religious texts, but especially the one he likes the most. Yeah, so there's no point reading you this anymore. You know what's going to happen. He's going to get the book thrown at him, and then they're going to hope they can just distract you all and talk about freedom of speech and liberalism a lot. It's painfully obvious. The man sat next to the President of the United States of America and said, "We're very, very proud of our freedom of speech," even though he jailed hundreds of people for exercising freedom of speech. This isn't rocket science. The man is a toad. His government is packed with perennially dishonest, self-serving slime. Obviously, it's childish that they think they can constantly talk out of both sides of the mouth every day of the week, and the general public are just going to lap it up like rice pudding, except this rice pudding's filled with powdered glass and dog shit. And with the neck of 10,000 giraffes, Jonathan Pye, who has embodied this irrational cognitive dissonance, both sides of every argument for years, is now tweeting, "The man who burned the book has been charged. It's difficult to see how this isn't enforcing blasphemy law rebadged for the current year." It is, yeah, but you wanted it. You advocated for it. All you've done for the last 5 years, like everyone else who reads The Guardian, is aggressively and dogmatically practice this weird two-tier ideology whereby if you simply replace the religious practitioner from a desert one to a ginger one, and you swap the book for a Bible, and you arrest them for far, far more milquetoast offences like praying near a clinic or refusing to use a juvenile pronoun in a school, then you're all for locking them up, aren't you? You love it when they lock those people up. And if you live under a rock and you haven't heard it, obviously I was referring there to Enoch Burke, a mild-mannered, pleasant Irish teacher who's been jailed for a third time because he doesn't want to use stupid pronouns because he doesn't think it's good for children. And the pleasant, mild-mannered Christian lady who was arrested for silent prayer because she happened to be stood near an abortion facility. Do you see what I'm getting at? This is cognitive dissonance on a colossal, nay, global scale. These people are maniacs because they're in this fruity little cult. They don't see it. They just can't. They can't bring themselves to criticise the adherents of that faith. The pot-bellied dwarf one, not the carpentry hippie one, because they've got this pyramid of victimhood. And in their world, they can never be seen to be in the wrong, these people. They're at the top of the tree, and the government agree with them, which is why, shock horror, they let them diddle kids for 25 years. Has this not sunk in yet? There's a pecking order and you're at the bottom. You're not even on the bottom rung. They've dug a hole under the ladder and you're the worms in the soil underneath it. Christ on a bike, it's obvious to anybody with eyeballs and ears. But that's just my opinion. I'm obviously not as clever as Jonathan Pye because I don't read The Guardian, right? So Jonathan Pye can defend these people for years, and then the second they crush a man's nuts for using his God-given right to politely disagree, all of a sudden he wants to champion liberalism again. As I said, these people aren't liberal. They wouldn't know what a liberal was if one of them walked up to them and booted them in the plums. Liberals are supposed to espouse the freedom to tell jokes and say controversial things, and yes, if they want to, burn a flag or a book or call a preacher, a beardy preacher, not a Catholic one, a knobhead to his face. And only a mentalist thinks that's a problem in a free society. But that's just what I think. That's just what I think, okay? If you're living in Cloud Cuckoo Land with Jonathan Pye and you think you're liberal than me and you're espousing freedom of choice indeed and I'm not, because I loudly disagree with the most intolerant, obnoxiously, offensively, noisily, fascistic and violent people on planet Earth, give your head a good shake and then leave a comment down below, all right? So I can laugh my tits off reading the total shite that some of you maniacs leave in the comments. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm doing a live stream today because I'm off to pick my missus up tomorrow from Santa Barbara. And so what's that? Friday night, 7 p.m. Be there or be square. I'll see you all there. Toodle pip. Cheers.